Hello there. Today, we are going to delve into the story of a notorious crime boss in Dali City, Yunnan Province, China. Deng Liang's gang was one of the rare large-scale criminal organizations in Dali City. With more than 70 members, they used violent methods, threats, and extortion to control over half of the city's entertainment venues. In fact, it could be said that they had nearly monopolized the entire entertainment industry in Dali. What was even more chilling was that among the entertainment establishments controlled by Deng Liang's gang, there were over 200 women forced into prostitution. Even more horrifying was the fact that many of them were minors. Beyond that, this crime lord also operated more than 10 gambling dens spread across Dali City. Deng Liang was known for his extreme ruthlessness. In broad daylight, he would openly beat and insult his subordinates and even random passersby, and no one dared to intervene. Whenever he went out, he drove a luxury car, accompanied by numerous bodyguards. Every time he stepped out of the vehicle, his bodyguards would form a protective line around him, making him appear just like the crime bosses in movies. In less than 8 years, Deng Liang's gang was responsible for 134 serious criminal cases, including public disturbances, intentional injury, extortion, and gang fights. Because of this, he was widely regarded as the #1 crime boss in Dali, according to local accounts in Yunnan Province. What shocked people even more was that behind Deng Liang was a massive protection network consisting of over 130 people. His case became one of the most significant examples since China launched its Crackdown on Organized Crime campaign in 2018. So, who exactly was this crime boss? How did he embark on a life of crime? And how did the police finally bring him down? Deng Liang was born in October 1976 in Mi Mountain, Sichuan. As a child, he showed no particularly bad behavior and had a childhood no different from other ordinary kids. He even had a scholarly appearance, looking somewhat intellectual. Because of this, he consistently ranked among the top students in school. In the early 1990s, after graduating from middle school, Deng Liang was accepted into Chengdu Water Conservancy and Hydropower Secondary School with excellent scores. Some may think that attending a secondary school was insignificant, but at that time, secondary schools were a symbol of academic excellence. They were the top choice for outstanding students after middle school. After graduating, students would then consider pursuing high school and later university. Moreover, during that time, secondary school graduates were guaranteed stable employment, ensuring their future security. As a result, after graduation, Deng Liang successfully joined the Numbers and Hydropower Bureau. Later, when the construction of the Manwan hydropower plant began, he was transferred to the construction site in Dali City, Yunnan Province. It was here that he met his first wife, a woman who sold clothes, and later married her. After the wedding, Deng Liang moved to his wife's hometown in Xiangyun County, settling there as a son-in-law. Deng Liang was quick-witted, especially when it came to business. Not long after getting married, he discovered a lucrative business opportunity and decided to open an eco-tourism restaurant in the area. Within a short period, his restaurant flourished, attracting a constant stream of customers and earning him his first substantial fortune. At that time, his life was prosperous. However, despite his financial success, as an outsider who had married into his wife's family, he could not escape the discrimination of the villagers. Especially as his business thrived, his neighbors grew, increasingly envious and displeased. Because of this, whenever he needed to handle certain matters or even just secure parking spaces for customers, he constantly faced obstruction and hostility from the locals. Each time, his mother-in-law had to step in to mediate. Over time, prolonged mistreatment took a toll on Deng Liang's mindset. He gradually realized that if he continued to be submissive and tolerant, he would always be looked down upon and oppressed. If he wanted to change his fate, he needed to become stronger, even ruthless, to gain respect. Eventually, a particular incident caused him to snap completely. He got into a fierce altercation with several villagers. After this event, Deng Liang decided to close his restaurant, take his wife, leave her hometown, and move to Dali City in search of a new path. At that point, his perspective had completely shifted. He believed that to survive and thrive in Dali, he had to be stronger than before. He needed power and subordinates under his command to ensure that no one would dare challenge him. With this mindset, in 2011, Deng Liang used the money he had earned from his restaurant to open the night banquet entertainment company in the Golden Harbor district of Dali, officially stepping into the bar, karaoke, and entertainment business. The entertainment industry was inherently complex, full of unexpected conflicts that required someone to take control. To protect his turf and build his own influence, Deng Liang quickly recruited dozens of followers. This marked the official formation of his criminal organization. Once he had his subordinates and power, Deng Liang's ruthless nature fully emerged. He used violence, intimidation, and coercion to seize control of numerous bars, karaoke venues, and entertainment establishments in Dali. According to local accounts, whenever he negotiated business deals, he always brought along more than 10 gang members. They would stand directly behind the negotiating party, using threatening gestures such as patting shoulders, grabbing hands, or even squeezing arms tightly, forcing them to sign contracts on his terms. If anyone dared refuse to cooperate, they would be subjected to harassment through soft violence at best and outright gang attacks at worst. In some cases, the gang would not only disrupt competitors' businesses, but even threaten the lives of their family members. Through such ruthless tactics, Deng Liang gradually took over more than half of Dali's entertainment industry, becoming the true entertainment kingpin of the region. However, his methods of making money did not stop there. Deng Liang also monopolized all parking lots surrounding the entertainment venues he controlled. Customers who parked there had to pay exorbitant fees, sometimes reaching hundreds of yuan per hour. Moreover, these fees were entirely arbitrary, determined solely by his subordinates' whims. If any customer complained or questioned the prices, a group of thugs would immediately appear, issuing threats or even resorting to violence on the spot. In the early hours of July 6, 2014, a car owner got into an argument with a parking lot attendant over an unreasonable parking fee. Within moments, several security guards armed with knives and scissors arrived at the scene. They not only brutally beat the man, but also stabbed him so severely that he was left critically injured. To make matters worse, they brazenly snatched the gold necklace from around his neck. Even after the victim reported the incident to the authorities, his complaint was met with silence. From that day on, no one dared to question the parking fees again. However, this was still not enough to satisfy the insatiable greed of Deng Liang. He expanded his operations by turning entertainment venues into places offering special services. Under his control, more than 200 women were forced into this line of work, including many underage girls. To maximize profits, Deng Liang implemented strict rules to monitor and control those he had coerced. He established a KPI system akin to a performance evaluation, imposing revenue targets and client quotas on each worker. Every individual was assigned a number and was required to memorize a set of harsh regulations, as well as undergo service training. On average, each person had to serve at least 3 clients per day, with some attending to as many as 7 or 8. While working in private rooms, they were expected to fulfill all client demands, from close companionship to other intimate interactions. Additionally, alcohol sales quotas were strictly enforced. Failure to meet these targets resulted in salary deductions at best and severe beatings at worst. Of course, for those who wanted to escape or refuse this work, there was virtually no chance. These women were tightly controlled, deprived of their freedom, and lived in constant fear. Every aspect of their daily lives was closely monitored. Leaving that place was nearly impossible, an endeavor harder than reaching the heavens. Meanwhile, Deng Liang indulged in a life of luxury and excess. Surrounded by loyal subordinates and personal attendants catering to his every need, he enjoyed fine dining and lavish entertainment daily. Whenever he stepped out, he was accompanied by at least 4 bodyguards. Every time he got in or out of a car, his guards would exit first, securing all 4 sides before he arrogantly stepped out, his demeanor rivaling that of a crime boss straight out of a movie. His personality became increasingly violent and ruthless. No matter how big or small the issue, day or night, if something displeased him, he would immediately resort to physical violence. Fear of his brutal reputation silenced any dissent. Victims. of his abuse never dared to report him to the police, terrified of retaliation. Beyond these illegal activities, gambling was another major source of income for his gang. Unsurprisingly, Deng Liang fully capitalized on this. He operated as many as 16 underground casinos across Dali, strategically located in bustling areas. Wherever there was economic prosperity, his gambling dens thrived, allowing him to amass unimaginable wealth. Deng Liang knew that to maintain his dominance, he needed strong backing. He actively sought connections with powerful figures, ensuring that for years he remained untouchable in Dali. He operated with impunity, free to do as he pleased. However, unlike many other crime lords, Deng Liang harbored a passion for the arts. In 2015, he invested heavily in the entertainment industry, founding Hengshan Media Company in Dali and pouring millions into film production. He funded 2 online films titled Zombie Groom and New Foolish Commander. Notably, most of the actors in these films were key members of his criminal organization. Despite his investment, both films were catastrophic failures, receiving overwhelmingly negative feedback from the market. Yet, this did not dampen his ambition in the film industry. He once declared his intention to invest tens of millions more to produce theatrical releases, aiming to expand his influence in cinema. However, before his filmmaking dreams could materialize, justice caught up with him. In August 2018, as China launched a nationwide crackdown on organized crime, the Ministry of Public Security designated Deng Liang's case as a priority investigation. After over 400 days of relentless pursuit, law enforcement dismantled his entire criminal empire, arresting 75 gang members. During the operation, authorities confiscated 49 banned weapons, 2 replica firearms, 1 explosive device, and 123 gambling machines. By September 2019, Deng Liang was convicted of 8 crimes, including leading and organizing a criminal syndicate, operating illegal casinos, running prostitution rings, extortion, and inciting gang fights. He was sentenced to 24 years and 6 months in prison, and all his assets were seized. Additionally, over 150 officials and influential figures who had protected him were investigated and punished accordingly. With that, his empire collapsed entirely. Looking back on this case, one can see how Deng Liang transformed from a man driven by personal resentment into a ruthless tyrant who relied on violence for survival. His downfall was inevitable. It was only a matter of time. In the face of adversity, one must remain calm and carefully consider the road ahead, avoiding rash and extreme actions. As the saying goes, true gold will shine eventually. Had Deng Liang channeled his intelligence and business acumen into legitimate ventures, he might have found success. But a single misguided decision led him down a path of crime, ultimately sealing his tragic fate. As the old adage goes, a moment of patience can prevent a storm, a step back can reveal a vast sky. In life, one must uphold principles and integrity. No matter how tempting personal desires or difficult circumstances may be, losing one's conscience and engaging in immoral deeds will only lead to downfall. What are your thoughts on this crime lord?
In the heart of Chongqing, behind its peaceful and glamorous facade, silent criminal activities have been taking place, shattering the lives of many. In 2011, a major case was exposed, shocking the entire public. A madam trampled on human rights to fulfill her dream of wealth and luxury. Even long after, the victims of this ruthless woman could never forget the hellish years they endured. She was known as the most powerful and infamous gang leader in Chongqing, China. A depraved youth, Wong Ziki was born into an ordinary family in Chongqing, the third of 5 siblings. Due to the large number of children, her family struggled financially. Normally, children who grow up in poverty would be more understanding and responsible, helping their parents. However, Ziki's eldest brother lacked ambition and spent his days associating with gangsters. Eventually, he got involved in a fatal brawl and was sentenced to death. Influenced by her brother's negative example, Ziki was far from a model student. With her striking appearance, she attracted attention from many young men around her. Thanks to her beauty and outgoing personality, she became the object of admiration among gang members. As a result, Ziki saw her looks as her greatest asset. Later on, she decided to quit school, and in 1990, before even graduating from high school, she and her younger sister, Wong, opened a beauty salon on the street. With their striking appearances, the two sisters could have easily been the face of their beauty salon, ensuring a thriving business. However, for some reason, their shop remained desolate from the day it opened. Watching other beauty salons crowded with customers, the sisters couldn't help but wonder why the gap was so significant. Later, Ziki quietly investigated and discovered that these salons were not making money from beauty treatments, but from services. Following the advice of industry insiders, Ziki grasped the key to success. After discussing with her sister, they decided to offer these services at their own salon. She believed that with this secret, their business would prosper. However, what puzzled the sisters was that they not only failed to make money, but also suffered significant losses. After months of struggling, they reluctantly admitted they couldn't continue. However, they were filled with resentment. They had invested both money and effort, yet they earned even less than an ordinary job. Despite their unwillingness to accept defeat, reality forced them to close the salon. They decided to find other work to sustain themselves before searching for a different path to wealth. A turning point in life. Just as they were discussing shutting down their business, a couple appeared. Two mysterious individuals who would change the fate of the sisters forever, ultimately dragging Wong Ziki into an inescapable abyss. The woman, Zhong Guanyu, known in the underworld as Sister Zhong, had been in the prostitution business for many years. She was an experienced figure, well-versed in every aspect of the trade. The man, Dao Minggu, was nicknamed the socialite, but in reality, he was nothing more than a parasite who lived off women. Ironically, because he was constantly surrounded by women, he understood their psychology very well, making him highly effective in management. When the couple proposed a partnership with Ziki, she agreed without hesitation. After all, her salon was already failing. At worst, she would still have to shut it down. She figured she might as well take a gamble. And so, the four of them embarked on an illegal money-making venture. What Ziki didn't anticipate was that as soon as the couple got involved, business at her salon suddenly boomed, drawing in an overwhelming number of customers. As a result, Ziki and her sister accumulated their first real earnings in life. After tasting success, the sisters began dreaming bigger. They wanted to expand their operations to make even more money. Tempted by enormous profits, the Wong sisters plunged deeper into the world of crime. By the end of 1998, Ziki had opened a tea house in the suburbs. At that time, tea houses were incredibly popular. Though they officially opened in the afternoon, they remained brightly lit and packed with customers until the early hours of the morning. The waiting line outside stretched to hundreds of people, almost longer than those at specialist doctors' clinics. To keep waiting customers entertained, Ziki innovatively introduced recreational facilities such as card game rooms and billiards tables on the lower floors. Her tea house quickly became a top entertainment hotspot known to everyone. The Madam of Chongqing. After the success of her tea house, Ziki continued expanding, eventually opening 8 more prostitution venues throughout the city. Having mastered the trade, she grew increasingly ambitious. Ziki understood that in order to run a successful business, she needed a steady customer base. To retain clients, she had to offer them something that kept them interested. In this industry, what customers truly sought was novelty. But how could she provide it? After much deliberation, the Wong sisters came up with a cruel strategy: recruiting workers from job markets. Though they had a plan, execution was difficult, as most job seekers were decent people who would never willingly enter such a trade. Understanding this, the sisters resorted to deception. They lured young, beautiful girls with promises of high salaries and stable jobs. These girls, young and inexperienced, were thrilled to find what seemed like a great opportunity, unaware that they were stepping into a den of wolves. Once inside, leaving was nearly impossible. Ziki would find excuses to confiscate their identification cards and phones, cutting off all communication with the outside world. Stripped of their documents, The girls became powerless, left with no choice but to obey. Some attempted to resist. This was when Dao Minggu's role became crucial. For first-time offenders, he would grant a chance. He locked them in a dark room without food for several days. However, for repeat offenders or those who refused to comply, he showed no mercy. The lightest punishment was a brutal beating. In worst cases, survival was uncertain. One of his most infamous torture methods involved an iron bed that sent shivers down the spine of anyone who heard about it. If a girl refused to engage in prostitution or tried to escape, she would be tied to this bed, subjected to violent beatings, and even sexual assault. Through such brutal means, Ziki maintained total control over the women. As her business expanded, Ziki went on to establish 9 more prostitution venues in Yuzhong District, Chongqing. However, with growing success and wealth, she also attracted envy and resentment. This led her to seek protection for herself. Apart from hiring assassins to eliminate those who disrupted her business, she also maintained close connections with other gang leaders. Knowing that her work could never be made public, she needed protection to continue operating. In addition to offering hefty bribes, Wong Ziki took on the task of supplying beautiful women to serve high-ranking officials in the Chongqing Police Department, including Huang Daicong, Deputy Director of the Criminal Investigation Division, and Chen Dao, Deputy Director of the Public Security Bureau. With this, she easily secured powerful backing. Once she had protection, her tea house business flourished even more. Wong Ziki's success was largely attributed to her team of hostesses. According to unofficial statistics at her various establishments, up to 2,000 women were held captive, and the number of clients they served reached into the millions. These figures were truly shocking. At this point, she had officially become the most powerful female crime boss in Chongqing, and no force dared to challenge her. A nightmare for the women. Beyond the threats of violence, Ziki and her accomplices treated these women with extreme cruelty, enforcing a fascist-like management system. The women were confined in small, cramped rooms with only a few bunk beds, no larger beds or furniture. During peak times, some were even forced to sleep on the floor, barely surviving day to day. They were locked up all day and only released at night to work. Even during their menstrual cycles or after forced abortions, they were not allowed to rest. Their lives were filled with suffering and despair. After each night's work, they were forced to attend evaluation meetings. Every week, a major meeting was held where those who violated rules or received customer complaints were punished on the spot. One girl, Zhou, was beaten and restrained for so long in the tea house that she developed a psychological disorder. She could only fall asleep if she tied herself up. Under prolonged, inhumane torture, her mental state deteriorated. She even began undressing involuntarily whenever she saw a man, demonstrating the horrors these women endured under Ziki's control. Another girl, Jun, realized she had been deceived and begged to leave. However, this infuriated Ziki, who then forced Jun to comply, just like all the others. But deep down, Jun never gave up on escaping. Finally, after 6 months, she saw an opportunity. One night, she was locked alone in a residential building. Overjoyed, she waited for the guard to leave and immediately attempted to escape using a rope she had secretly prepared. Tragically, the rope was too short, leaving her dangling mid-air from the 8th floor. In a desperate act of survival, she let go and fell. When she regained consciousness, she was told that she had suffered permanent paralysis. However, before she could even process the loss of her legs, Dao Minggu, one of Ziki's top enforcers, arrived to threaten her. He forced her to claim that she had simply fallen while cleaning a window, warning that if she refused, he would kill her and her family. Terrified, Jun complied, becoming a puppet, saying exactly what they wanted. She thought that by obeying, they might let her go. But even after becoming paralyzed, she was still not free. To cover up their crimes, Ziki's gang continued to detain her illegally for 6 years. It was only when the police finally rescued her that she was freed from the darkness. During those 6 years, she lived in a pitch-black room, only able to move around by pulling on a rope. The women not only endured harsh living conditions, but were also fed moldy or expired food. Moreover, they were forced to undergo training sessions and escape drills. Ziki demanded that they be fully dressed within 25 seconds after hearing an alarm and follow a predetermined escape route. One might wonder, if Ziki believed she was untouchable, why bother with escape drills? In reality, this was one of her most cunning psychological manipulations. These drills were nothing but brainwashing exercises. During some sessions, Ziki would arrange for her men to dress as police officers, pretending to arrest and interrogate the women. If any girl dared to confess the crimes they suffered or pleaded for real police help, she was severely punished, thrown into a dark cell without food or water for days, or brutally beaten. Because of these drills, the women became convinced that Ziki controlled the police, leaving them completely hopeless. None of them realized it was all an elaborate deception to ensure total obedience. With these cruel strategies, Ziki kept thousands of women under her iron grip for 15 years, amassing hundreds of millions of yuan, while countless women were harmed or went missing. Retribution for evil. However, as the saying goes, those who commit evil will pay the price. After 15 years of unchecked rule, the Chinese government's intensified crackdown on organized crime and the fall of her protectors finally led to Ziki's exposure. On the night of August 7, 2009, Chongqing police raided Ziki's tea house with over 200 officers, dismantling her criminal empire and arresting 38 individuals, including high-level managers. However, the main culprits, Wong Ziki, Wang Yuaning, and Dao Minggu, escaped capture. The police quickly tracked their movements. Wang Yuaning had fled overseas, while Ziki and Dao Minggu hid in Shenyang after their business was shut down. On September 9, 2009, police arrested Ziki and her accomplices in a shopping mall in Shenyang. By August 2010, the court publicly announced their sentences. Wang Ziki was sentenced to death, and all her personal assets were confiscated. Dao Minggu received the death sentence and was stripped of his political rights for life. Meanwhile, Wang Yuaning fled China and hid in Austria and the Philippines. In response, Chongqing police issued a red notice through Interpol. Eventually, with the assistance of Philippine authorities, Yuaning was captured at a fast food restaurant. On April 1st, she was extradited back to Chongqing for trial. For years, Ziki and Yuaning disregarded the law, brutally enslaving over 2,000 women, murdering countless victims, and eliminating their enemies. Their atrocities were beyond forgiveness. But as the saying goes, the net of heaven is vast, though sparse, none escape. On December 7th, 2011, Wang Ziki and her accomplices were executed. For 15 years, countless young women with dreams were tortured, exploited, and abused. Even today, many survivors struggle to move on, forever haunted by the horrors they endured. Some never regained the strength to rebuild their lives. The crimes committed by Ziki and her gang were beyond redemption. They trampled on human dignity, stripping women of their future and hope. This case has now come to an end. What do you think about the notorious madam and crime boss, Wang Ziki?